All right, so it was announced yesterday. I don't know if it was Justin Trudeau himself or if it was some, staffer or whatever, but it doesn't matter. The big story out of yesterday is actually there's a couple big stories. Number one, Trudeau planning social welfare system overhaul. Sources say this is from Global. Pierre Poilievre also came out with the redacted emails from the Liberal We scandal, basically everything that was redacted and or everything was basically everything was redacted, and the stuff that wasn't redacted still made them look really bad. So though, I mean, just when you again we there's been a story, seems like, once or twice a week from this whole we thing that the more we find out, the worse it looks. And if the stuff that wasn't redacted looked really bad, then who knows how bad the stuff that wasn't redacted was. And I mean, it's probably safe to say, obviously, we don't know 100% for sure, but I mean, if these emails made them look better, then I'm sure they wouldn't have redacted any of it, right? So I'm pretty sure it's safe to say that the We scandal just keeps getting worse and worse. And it should have already brought down the government, but I don't think it will bring down the government. No matter how bad it gets, I don't know if it'll bring down the government. Maybe, but I'm still not confident. Literally, if Justin Trudeau and these liberals were literally, and I mean literally, siphoning, tens of millions of dollars to them, their family, and their friends, I don't even think that would be enough to bring them down at this point. And I'm not saying they did that, but literally, I think that's an example that I don't think would bring them down. But the point of this title here is Trudeau planning social welfare system overhaul. Now, they don't really get into detail about what they mean by that, but I'm pretty sure, I would probably say 95% sure, that they will plan to increase and expand it. Like, I would bet pretty much every dollar I have that they're not going to be like, hey, we tried this whole welfare thing, not only can we not afford it, but it clearly hasn't worked. We're gonna scale it back. Like that's never gonna happen. That's never gonna happen until the dollar and the entire system goes completely belly up, which is always their argument for not clawing it back. But what they're too ignorant to realize is that it's going to go belly up, whether they like it or not. We can do it now or we can do it later. Again, the argument is, oh, well, if we bring claw back welfare, poor people are going to die. But again, they're so ignorant that they don't real. I mean, some of them I think do and just don't care. But to maintain the current levels of spending, the government of Canada is literally having to take out hundreds of billions of dollars in debt per year. So a 5-year-old, a monkey, could figure out and understand that the way we're currently going, we can't afford it. And all the people say, oh, if we just raise taxes on the rich. No, raising taxes on the rich won't do anything. Number one, it won't even come close to making up the difference when you look at the debt. And number two, if you were to tax the rich at the rate that a lot of these people want, all of a sudden down the road you'd have no more rich people, or at the very least a lot less rich people to tax. Why? Because a lot of them would just leave, or they would find loopholes, or that you just tax their wealth away and they'd all of a sudden be middle class or upper middle class. So you let's say you think you're going to get $50 billion a year more in taxes. Well, maybe the first year or two or three you get that, but down the road you don't, because the way that these people made so much money is because they weren't taxed, at insane amounts. And that is one of the problems. So again, now that we've got that out of the way, what they're going to do, I think it will be either UBI, or I don't think they'll call it a UBI. The same reason why socialists nowadays tend to not call themselves socialists, because there is a very negative, stigma around the term UBI. Number one, because it doesn't work. The places that have tried it, it hasn't worked. It doesn't work both in theory or in practice. So they'll switch it around. They'll call it something else. Again, that's one thing that the left is very good at compared to the right, is that they're incredibly good at manipulating people through language. Again, with the whole Antifa and Black Lives Matter is the classic example of that. And the whole mostly peaceful the headlines like, 20 cops or 30 cops injured during mostly peaceful protests. So again, they manipulate people using language, right? Like, they constantly harp on, oh, Antifa means anti-fascist, therefore they can do no wrong. But no, it doesn't matter what you call yourself. If the KKK switched their names to the anti-racist, would that change anything? No, they would still be a bunch of racists, right? So what you call yourself doesn't matter. But the problem is that the left has convinced most people that that's the entirety of what should be considered. In reality, it's complete BS, right? So what I predict would come out of this is they're going to keep spending at an all-time high. And again, this is another lie of modern times, is that these politicians claim we follow Keynesian economics, and you're taught in school that we follow Keynesian economics. Well, number one, we don't follow Keynesian economics for many reasons. Number one, the main one being, under Keynesian economics, you don't run deficits when times are good, right? Like 2019 was literally one of the best years, for the market in decades, probably since the early 2000s, late 90s. Um, and the government was still running what, $30 billion deficit. Pretty much every province was still running. In fact, I don't know if there was a province not running deficit, especially the big ones. Everybody was running deficits again, so they don't believe in Keynesian. They according to these people, having Keynesian economics is considered too far to the right. Like, that's just how crazy things are nowadays, that using the economic systems that most leftist governments would claim to use is considered too far right. But yet we have those same people argue, oh, what are you talking about? The liberals in the NDP aren't far left. Like, if anything, again, they're closer to being communist than they are centrist. Like, and there's no debate there. Like, it's not even close. Like, there's so many pieces of evidence that it's not even close. So anyway, the next thing I wanted to talk about here is from Dinesh D'Souza. And he says Kamala Harris' mom is an Asian Indian. Her dad, Donald Harris, is by his own account descended from one of the largest slave owners in Jamaica. In what sense they can claim she sorry, in what sense can they claim that the African American experience of being descended from slaves and subject to segregation and Jim Crow? So, this is the point here, being that according to the left, anybody who, all these slave owners and all this kind of stuff, it's just the worst thing in the world. And I'm not trying to say it's good, but I just think that the left is being a little too hyperbolic about it. I think that there's a common middle ground, that we can condemn these slave owners and these kind of people, but not, think that people who 10 generations ago did some bad stuff was I don't think it's 10. I think it was her great grand, or her great grandpa or great great grandpa, I don't remember which one, was one of the largest slave owners again. So according to the leftist logic, she should be canceled, right? But no, it's only bad when the left can benefit from it, right? Like, the Democratic Party has always been the party that has supported racism from, the beginning days of the states up until today, and there was no big switch. Like, again, that's one of the most common lies people bring up. Um, so again, yeah, the Democrats have always been the racist. They were the ones that supported slavery. They were the ones that supported Jim Crow. They were the ones that were against the Civil Rights Act, and they're the ones that support racist laws nowadays. So again, nothing has changed. Like, they basically switched from being, I mean, the one thing they switched from was being racist against blacks to, because of their own guilty conscience, racist in favor of blacks, right? Because they're big on the whole, um, you know, letting blacks into college, even though they're underqualified, hiring more blacks and, high paying, status jobs, even though they're underqualified, all that kind of stuff. That's what the left's into, and right, and by default, they are racist against Asians and whites, because um, by giving a black person, or a woman who's underqualified or doesn't have as good a grades, a job, or a seat in a college, position, you're being racist by definition, right? Because if you're not actually racist, you believe in best person for the job. It doesn't matter if, oh, blacks are underrepresented. No, blacks are underrepresented because, number one, they have a lower IQ on average. And number two, they have a culture of, being, studying and being good at school is, being white, and there's this negative stigma again. So, and again, women are underrepresented because number one, they're the ones that have kids. They have less ambition. I mean, there's numerous reasons why women are underrepresented, and I would say maybe like 1% of the difference in outcomes is due to prejudice. Like that's something that they get completely wrong. So anyway, if the left had any spine, Harris would be canceled, but because they don't, and all they care about is power, again, it's only bad when the other team does it. Basically, is what they're saying. So Trump brokered this peace deal about a week ago, which was more than Obama or Bush ever did. Obama got a Nobel Peace Prize for literally doing nothing. I mean, he arguably did more damage to the Middle East than Bush did. And yet he still got a Nobel Peace Prize. Not only that, he had to spend, what was it, like tens of billions of dollars to negotiate that Iran nuke deal, and Trump helps negotiate this peace deal for nothing, and yet no Nobel Peace Prize for Trump, right? And I'm not the hugest fan of Trump. I think he's just good enough to vote for. Again, there's a ton of stuff that I don't like about him, but the one thing when it comes to Trump is that most of the people who are anti-Trump are just anti-Trump because they're literally the TV told me Trump is bad, therefore I don't like him. That's basically why most people are. It's just sheer emotions. They can't come up with a legitimate argument against him, and the way I can tell that is that there's many legitimate gripes when it comes to Trump, but the vast majority of the ones you hear from the average person are just complete BS, right? Like they're complete BS. Like he's a racist. Like no, he isn't. Enforcing immigration law, which every president has done up to this point, is not racist. Because to make that argument, you would have to argue that Obama was a racist because he was deporting every bit as many people as Trump was. Like again, these people are absolutely insane. He started the whole kids in cages thing that the left is so up in arms about. So, yeah, it's just classic hypocrisy. And the last thing I wanted to bring up here is Justin Trudeau has taken 48 days off this year. In 2019, he took 91 days off. And again, like I always mention, I hate to hate on Trudeau so much, but the problem is that the guy, he deserves every bit of hate he gets, right? Like, there's a massive scandal going on right now, and he's nowhere to be found. I think he's taken like the last 2 weeks off pretty much. I think he might be coming back, but yeah, he really doesn't care. And again, when it comes to this, I don't think he actually cares all that much anymore. I think when he first started, he actually did kind of believe what he believed in, but now he kind of knows that as long as he totes the far left line, people are still going to elect him. Like it doesn't matter what he does wrong. He could take half the year off, and he's literally sat in Parliament for like what is it, 10 days this year, or some crazy low amount. Like people don't care; they're going to vote for him no matter what. So, yeah, I think he knows that. And again, that's the one thing too. Like I don't necessarily blame him for that because if the average person was in his position, I'm pretty sure they would do the same thing. And again, it's just sheerly driven by incentive. For the example of if you knew that you could take 91 days off, from your job in a year and still get paid the same, who wouldn't do that? Like most people would do that, right? So of course you're going to do that. So again, that's not something I necessarily blame him on. Now again, the prime minister should be held to a higher standard than the average person. Number one, because they're the prime minister. That's kind of what they signed up for. And number two, they're being paid a lot more than the average person, right? So, yeah, I mean, Justin Trudeau, what can I say? I mean, he's pretty much single-handedly destroying Canada. But again, nothing he can do can change people's mind at this point. So that's why I always say I'm kind of tired about hating on the guy because um, nothing's going to change the average person's mind. Like nothing's going to change the average person's mind. That's kind of the only reason why I make these videos is that because I don't want to have a guilty conscience because I know Canada's heading down a terrible path, and I don't want to know that I could have potentially changed some people's mind and have that on my mind. So anyway, I'm gonna leave the video there. If you liked it, make sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. check me out on those other check out the links that are in the description. Follow me on those other platforms if you haven't already, and stay tuned for more.